Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback or $2.99 ebook download, including my latest NYPD Presumption and Dysfunction. Hope everyone's having a great week. Before we get to this week's story, let's hit the true crime section of the New York Post. A first-class pervert on an American Airlines plane masturbated for an hour next to a stunned fashion entrepreneur on a flight from New York City to Milan. But a flight attendant dismissed his revolting behavior, saying, "Men just do stuff like that." Nell Elsheif, the CEO of 3 different companies, including a luxury vegan leather brand Mela, said she was terrified to go to sleep during the May 27th trip out of LaGuardia Airport, fearing her seatmate would assault her. The man, identified in court papers only as John Doe, chugged multiple glasses of champagne before Elshoff noticed him grabbing his groin and rubbing his genitals over his pants, she said in a legal filing. John Doe continued to masturbate for approximately 60 minutes. During that time, neither the flight attendant nor AA crew member walked through the premium economy cabin, according to a Brooklyn federal court lawsuit. The flight crew failed to report the incident, and the flight attendant allegedly refused to even speak to John Doe, she said. Okay, so first of all, she's suing the airline. Doesn't say she's suing John Doe because he's not named, so she's suing the airline. So she didn't go to the police. She didn't ask for the police to be called. It looks like the flight crew didn't ask the police to be called, and now she's suing the airline. There's a lot here. I don't know why this guy wasn't arrested. I don't know. I mean, did he do it? There should be witnesses. If a guy just whips out, his pecker on a plane and starts rubbing one out, I can't see how other people, especially in this day and age, someone farts on a plane, it goes viral, and there's video footage of it everywhere. This guy is going to town, and she's the only one that sees it, which, I mean, maybe there was no one sitting across from them. I don't know. I wasn't there. But it's weird. No one gets arrested. And this is over a year ago, supposedly. And a lot to unpack. I really don't know what happened, but it's definitely more to the story. An NYPD cop bizarrely decided to take a jump shot in the back of a Queens home while a fire raged on its top floor, according to a shocking new video that has critics burning. The unidentified uniformed officer threw up a long-range air ball in the yard of a still-burning 3-story home at Far Rockaway on March 21st. The video of the spectacle was posted on Instagram. The NYPD said it's aware of the video and is under internal review. Not a good look for the NYPD. I saw it. You got a fire truck. It looks like a 2-story house. There's flames coming out of the top. And this uniformed cop just nonchalantly picks up a basketball, dribbles it a couple of times, and fires a shot at the basketball hoop. The optics are awful. Did he check to see if there were people inside? I don't know. This kind of reminds me of the incident it's more than a couple. It's probably about 20 years ago. The Thanksgiving Day parade, when one of the floats kind of went rogue and hit a light pole, and all sorts of crap was going on. And cop pulled out a knife, and once the float went down, he started stabbing the crap out of the float, which wasn't good optics because he kind of was over and above the way he was doing it. But at least he was doing something. I mean, at least he was trying to deflate this, balloon that was attacking people. This guy, it just shows just a lack of common sense, especially in this day and age. Everybody's filming everything. So you're just going to take a jump shot while there's a fire burning in the house? Doesn't look good. Shocking video captured the moment a deranged Tennessee driver allegedly, it's not alleged, I saw it, ran over the head of a repo man who was trying to hook up a car to a tow truck. The victim, who goes by the name of Phil Pac-Man Guy, miraculously survived being rolled over, not allegedly, by motorist Nicholas Ray, 34 years old, who tried to stop the repossession of his Ford Focus. The now viral footage showed the victim underneath the red Ford Focus when Ray ran towards the car, jumped into the driver's seat, and barreled over the victim's head and torso. The crazed driver then spent nearly a minute maneuvering his way out of the parking lot as his pal, Brandy Revels, 27 years old, allegedly guided Ray to freedom. The insane footage showed. This guy should go to jail for attempted murder. He could have very easily have killed this guy. He went over his head and body. I mean, the odds of this guy surviving was slim to none, and somehow the guy is okay. I saw somewhere that someone's posted that the repo guy should sue the guy that did this. How are you going to get money out of a guy that can't make his car payments on a Ford Focus? Okay? That just kind of says it right there. This story I absolutely couldn't get enough of. Lionel Moreno, who encouraged illegal aliens, to invade abandoned houses in sick TikTok videos, was sent back to the narco state this week after President Trump resumed deportation flights to the country. Moreno crossed the Texas border illegal in April 2022 and was quickly released into the U.S. The Venezuela border crosser, however, failed to appear for his required check-ins with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, leading the feds to arrest him in Ohio in March 2024. An immigration judge ordered Moreno's deportation last October, but the Venezuelan refused to accept any deportation flights at this time. Of course, why should he? There's more to this story, and actually, he caused a ruckus on the plane. Like he was screwing around in the plane, and I think they might have tased him or kind of tuned him up a little bit just to get him in line to get him on the flight. This piece of shit. I talked about this earlier. He's showing videos about come to the United States. It's a big joke. Bye, asshole. A Florida influencer and a dog mom filmed herself having sex with her pet chihuahua before posting the sickening video on Instagram, according to police. Logan Gominski, 27 years old, of Ocala in Marion County, Florida, allegedly shared the horrific clips with her 15,000 followers on Instagram. The influencer was arrested March 21st and charged with 2 felonies, sexual activity involving an animal and filming sexual activity involving an animal. Sounds like the same thing. The Marion County Sheriff's Office said. What a piece of shit. I mean, and no common sense whatsoever. She's young. But I mean, first of all, who has sex with a dog? It's disgusting. Second of all, why would you put it on social media? It's just so crazy. These young people are just so addicted. Everybody thinks they're going to make all this money being a social media influencer. You're not. You're going to make pennies on the dollar. And even if you do hit it big, you got to constantly chasing it. You know, you're not Johnny Carson with guests coming on every week. Far and few between people that social media influencers that are going to make it. And these people just keep raising the bar and doing these sick things. And people are starting to turn on them. If you go on YouTube, or sometimes it pops up in my feed in X, where you get these teenagers that pull pranks and scams, and they fuck with people. They walk up to them and they swat them. People are starting to fight back. I've seen a couple of teenagers get the shit kicked out of them because they're screwing around with some guy at Home Depot or a Costco. Someone's minding their own business and they're screwing around with him, and they whoop their ass, and rightfully so. So I was talking to one of my NYPD buddies the other day, and we were just talking about guys we worked with, and this one character's name came up, and I don't think I've spoke about him on the podcast, and if I have, I've got a lot more to it. When I was a young cop working in Bronx Task Force, I had 2 years on the job, or maybe a little under, and there was a guy that worked there, and his nickname was the Duster. And they called him the Duster because his uniform was kind of tattered. He was an older guy. Like if I was in my early 20s, he was easily in his 40s. He had greasy hair, long greasy hair. He was Puerto Rican and Jewish, and his uniform was a mess. And he had he always had dirt under his fingernails. And he smoked these little greasy 10-cent cigars that you would get in the store. They were god awful. The cigar was always breaking apart in his hands. And the guy was an idiot savant when it came to cars. So here I am in task force, and I'm a car guy. I'm locking up car thieves. And this guy knows the world of altered VINs, when people change vehicle identification numbers. So I always try to pick his brain, but it was so difficult because he was just a different kind of guy. And he was kind of a whiny, passive-aggressive person. And he had a high-pitched voice. He went through partners like crazy. And the few times I worked with him, I was fascinated and couldn't wait to get away from him at the same time. And he rubbed a lot of guys the wrong way. So to give you an example, one of my old partners had worked with him one day, and it was the evening before the Super Bowl. So say the Super Bowl's on Sunday, he's working with the Duster on a Saturday night, and he tells the Duster, listen, don't get me involved. If an arrest comes up, either you're taking it or we're going to call someone else. I don't want to take it. I have plans for the Super Bowl. I don't want to get tied up in court tomorrow. We'll call somebody else, but please don't go actively looking for an arrest. So my buddy thought he was slick, and he grabbed the wheel of the car, figuring he's going to steer him away from anything that could get him into an arrest. Well, they had a computer car that night, and the Duster is just punching plates. And my buddy tells him, listen, don't run plates. And he's like, no, I'm just kind of. So he says, they're driving up in the 4-3. And the Duster goes, that car over there is stolen. So my buddy goes, I'm telling you right now, don't get us involved. I'm putting it over the air. And my buddy's like, what are you doing? And he gets on the air and he says, we're following a stolen car. And he puts the lights on. The car takes off. P.S. They wind up getting into a car chase with this stolen car that the driver wants nothing to do with, right? So now the precinct cops don't want it, and my buddy doesn't want it. And then the duster turns around and goes, "No, I can't take the arrest. And besides, I got seniority." He goes, "Seniority, my ass." My buddy was a pretty big guy. He basically told him, "I'm going to kick the crap out of you unless you take the arrest." So needless to say, the duster rubbed people the wrong way. I didn't mind him, but he was a pain in the ass. Another story with him is he lived over in the 4-3 somewhere, and he got a side gig working at like Top Tomato, one of those places that sell produce and meat, like a supermarket in the Bronx. And what he would do is, as the security guard, his job was just to kind of watch the parking lot, right? Well, what he would do is, he was a genius with cars. So what he would do is, if he saw a car in the parking lot that he thought was tagged, or the VIN number was changed, or there was something up with the car, he'd watch the guy go into the store, and then he would crawl underneath the guy's car with a notepad and his little flashlight and mirror and rag, and he's looking for hidden vehicle identification numbers stamped on transmissions or stamped on the frame, or depending on the vehicle. So we always used to think that was funny, that here this guy is in his spare time, is crawling underneath people's cars. Another story about the duster is, I was working in the 5-0, so I get away from task force. I'm in the 5-0, and I'm with the Spanish cop who grew up in the 4-4 precinct, and we were lodging a prisoner. And I see the duster in Bronx Central booking with a prisoner, and I just kind of give him a nod. And the Spanish cop turns to me and goes, "You know that guy?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I used to work with him in task force." "That son of a bitch," like just motherfucker, and I'm under his breath. Like, I was like, "What's wrong?" I don't want to get into it now, right? So we lodge our prisoner, and we get back in the RMP, and we're driving back up to the precinct, and I'm like, "Dude, what is it?" He goes, "He locked me up when I was a kid." And I go, "What, for a suspended license?" He goes, "No." He goes, "I was driving a gypsy cab for a company," and he says, he pulled me over, and the car was stolen. The vehicle number, identification number was changed. He goes, "I just worked for this gypsy cab company." He goes, "I didn't know anything about it." He goes, "The son of a bitch." He goes, "I pleaded with him, but I don't own this car. Talk to the owner of the cab company." So the duster put this kid through the system, and he wound up beating the case, and obviously got the case expunged, and he later became a member of the New York City Police Department. But man, he was so pissed the day he saw him that day in Bronx Central booking. I heard a lot of crazy stories about the duster that just they couldn't possibly be true. And then I'm going to explain how they were true. So one of the stories floating around about him was, when he was a cop in the 4-0 precinct, he went out with a lady of the night. He was either an escort or a prostitute or whatever. He paid her with a check, and the check bounced. So this woman comes into the 4-0 precinct one day, comes to the desk officer and shows this bounced check that belonged to the duster, and said, "This guy paid me." So long story short, he got in trouble for that, and he got bounced out of the 4-0, and he wound up going to a Manhattan North precinct. So he's working up in North End of Manhattan, and he gets a gun call. And I think it was like a small caliber, like a 25 or something, locks the guy up with a gun. Him and his partner bring it into the station house. I don't know, maybe at a foot post, but he brings the collar to the station house. And, "What do you got?" "Got a gun collar." So he's taking everything out of the perp's pockets. The perp's handcuffed. He's putting everything up on the desk, right? Desk officer's writing in the blotter. Maybe the desk officer stepped up to get away or something. The duster is playing with the 25 in front of the desk with the prisoner, and he can't figure out how to unload it. So basically, if you don't know how to do that, leave the damn thing alone, put it in a place where you lock it up, and either have a gun buff. There's always some cop in the precinct that knows everything about guns, or call emergency service. Emergency service knows everything about guns. They'll come, they'll unload the gun, they'll empty it, they'll make it safe. The bad guy goes, "I'll show you." So the duster uncuffs the perp and hands him the 25 that he took off of him. And luckily, the bad guy starts unloading the gun. The desk officer picks up his head or comes back and sees the perp with a gun in his hand, picks up the precinct blotter and smashes it. And those things were heavy. It was like Moses' tablets from the 10 Commandments. Knocks the guy down with the thing. P.S. The duster gets in trouble again. Again, the duster, he just didn't get it. As much as a genius as he was with cars, he had no common sense whatsoever. So there was Bronx guys my age will know about this place. There was this great little hole-in-the-wall German restaurant in the 4-0 precinct. It was called the Schlitz Inn. It was all the way down on, like, over by Walnut. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's like where the tugboats would come in. We had a tugboat strike down there. It's in a godforsaken place. There's nothing around. It's an industrial area. very few houses, and it was a little hole in the wall. It looked like a bar. But if you went inside, it was like stepping back into the 1970s. It was wood paneling and old tables, like the decor hadn't been changed in decades. And it was a family-run business. And like Grandma Frida, who had to have been like 100 years old, worked in the back and cooked bratwurst and schnitzel and sauerkraut all day long. I mean, as soon as you walked in, the place smelled delicious. And the son was like about 50 years old. It was like he was chained there, like they never let him leave. Like everybody in there was German and worked there. And the place was great for lunch. They stayed open till about 9 o'clock at night. And I guess that's where the locals or the guys that worked, there was a couple of supermarket chain warehouses there. So I'm sure the truck drivers knew about it, would get like a late lunch or an early dinner. But it wouldn't be the type of place you would go for dinner or take a date out. Let's just put it that way. I mean, the place was a hole in the wall. Well, the duster brings a woman there who apparently he didn't know very well. And they're drinking at the bar or at a table, and they're getting liquored up, and they get into an argument. And then the next thing you know, they're throwing beer on each other, and bitch slaps are being exchanged. The duster, to my knowledge, was the only person that was barred from the Schlitz Inn. Like that was a running joke around the Bronx. Like, well, you can't go to the Schlitz Inn with the duster. And he wound up, after all this craziness, he winds up in the 4-4 precinct on midnights. I don't know if he was dumped or he wanted to go there, but he was in the tail end of his career. He either had 20 or was very close to it. And I guess he figured going to the 4-4 on midnights, which back then was the busiest precinct, that and the 4-6 were the busiest precincts in the Bronx, he could pad his pension with overtime. So he's working midnights with this guy who I'd love to get this guy on my podcast because this guy was like a super cop. This guy was a magnet. He would get involved in off-duty things, shootings, gunfights. I mean, this guy was the real deal. I'm not going to say his name, but I'm sure there's a lot of 4-4 cops know who I'm talking about. And him and the duster, how those two found each other beyond me, because one guy is go, 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 and the duster could be distracted by shiny objects. They're working at midnight in the 4-4. I think it's on Anderson Avenue. And they get called to a domestic or a call. And they pull up in front of the wrong building. And when they pull up, these two Spanish guys are coming out of the building with shopping bags. And they just stop at the top step and they look at the two cops, and the two cops are just looking at them, and they turn around and they just charge right back into the building. Something's up. So this cop that I was telling you about goes charging in. He's younger and faster. He gets into the building. The two bad guys get into an apartment. And from what I remember, it was kind of like that scene in Serpico where I think the duster's partner got his foot in the door and he's trying to push the door open. And what wound up happening is these guys were moving kilos of coke. So the shopping bags contained weight, a couple of kilos of coke. Well, they're trying to get into the door. One of the bad guys hangs a 44 Magnum out the door and lets go with a round or two when he hits the duster in his bulletproof vest, knocks him down. Now gunfight, bullets are exchanged. 10-13, 4-4 shows up. They get the bad guys. The duster goes to either Jacoby or Presbyterian. I forget which. That's where they'll rush cops. When an NYPD member gets shot, it's a big thing. Like everybody from the precinct goes to the hospital. The duty captain comes. The borough chief is on his way. The police commissioner is going to show up. The press is there. I mean, it's bells and whistles, and they want answers. What happened? Who shot? Who didn't shoot? Is the cop okay? So once they establish that the duster's going to be okay, the police commissioner comes in his room. And this is standard with the NYPD, and I know this has happened to a bunch of guys. The police commissioner is almost like the fairy godmother or the tooth fairy. He's going to come in. He's going to, you okay? And he's going to ask you, is there anything I can do for you? Is there someplace you want to work? So basically, that's your golden ticket. That's your one opportunity in the NYPD. If you want to work someplace, now is the time to say it. So the police commissioner asked the duster, is there anything I could do for you? Where would you like to work? And he goes, well, I'm working midnights in the 4-4. And he goes on and tells him that he wants to make more overtime, but his squad sergeant won't let him have a computer car, and he'd really like to make more overtime. He's just rambling. Now, part of it is he just got shot, and part of it, it's the duster, and he's, I'm not making my overtime. So his delegate steps in, thank God, and says, Commissioner, can I just have a word with him? And the police commissioner was like, yeah, okay. He steps outside. And like the delegate almost slaps him. He's like, what are you doing? If there's any place you want to work in the NYPD right now, you want to go to aviation, you want to go to terrorist task force, you're a car guy, do you want to go to auto crime? And, yeah, you know what? I'd like to go to auto crime. Police commissioner comes back in the room. He goes, poof. Soon as he's healed up and everything is fine, and he winds up in auto crime. So I knew he was working there, and he was there a couple of years before I got there. And by the time I got to auto crime, he was no longer, he was in a team in the Bronx office. The problem with him was, again, he's not from this world. And when you start doing ridiculous things, especially in OCCB, they're going to do one of two things. If they can, they're going to kick you out and send you to the detective squad because you're being a pain in the ass. Or if you have something like what happened to him, he was shot, or you had a family member that, God forbid, got killed or something. And even if they're not going to kick you out. What they're going to do is they're going to send you out to the mothership out in Queens, and they're going to have you answer phones. They're either going to put you in calls for service, which is like the command center of auto crime. So detectives are calling there all day long, asking guys to look things up for them or getting search warrants and stuff. They're not going to kick you out, but they're going to kind of send you out to the farm, if that makes any sense. So I wind up in the Bronx office, and I'm like, where's the duster? And like, I'm hearing all these crazy stories, and I'm like, yeah, I pretty much know them to be true. And the reason I know them to be true is I had a very good friend of mine, one of the best cops I ever worked with. He puts in for OCCB as a sergeant. He gets drafted into IEB, which he did not want to go. He went kicking and screaming. But a guy like that is an asset in IEB because he's not going to screw you for some nonsense. So I run into him one day at Times Square on New Year's Eve, and he's in IEB, and he goes, hey. And I go, what, are you going to give me a rip? And he goes, no, how's it going? And we're talking and stuff and shooting the shit. And he goes, he says, in IEB, he goes, you have access to things that is, even a member like an OCCB, you would never have access to. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, I can see anybody's personnel file. He goes, and some of the stuff, he goes, you hear crazy stories about people and none of it's true. I said, yeah. He goes, some of it's really true. And he goes, like the duster, because my buddy worked in the 4-4. And I go, really? And he goes, yep, the story about the Schlitz in, the story about him handing the bad guy the gun, bouncing the check. He goes, all true. Like he was bored one day and he decided to look it up, and it was true. So anyway, the duster is working out in Queens, and he's not happy. And one of the reasons the duster wound up getting bounced out of the Bronx office was there was another guy. I should actually do an episode about him. I don't want to go too much into it, but there was another guy that worked in the Bronx office who was an idiot savant as well. And we used to call him TikTok because he could go off at any moment. I'll save him from another day. Anyway, TikTok and the duster were a lot alike, actually too much alike. So what wound up happening was they couldn't get along. And a couple of times they almost got into fistfights, which TikTok was built like a brick shithouse. He probably would have wound up killing the duster. And they wound up moving the duster out to Queens. He stayed out there. He probably did about 25 years on the job, maybe a little more. Then he retired. And I guess the reason I brought him up was me and this guy were just talking about guys we hadn't seen in years. And he had mentioned to me that he thought he passed. And then doing a little research, I found out he did pass. It's 70 years old. So sorry, I really feel bad about it. But he was an interesting character. Wasn't a bad guy, but again, just one of those people in the NYPD that you run into that you didn't work for very long, but just all the craziness and the stories behind it. So that's my story for this week. As always, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my listeners in Brooklyn, New York, Wantagh, Long Island, Toledo, Ohio, East Peoria, Illinois, Dalton, Georgia, Wells, Nevada, and Ashburn, Virginia. If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background, please drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram, VicFerrari50. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button because it helps with the algorithms. And if you enjoy the content, check out my Amazon author page. Just go to Amazon, type in my name, Vic, Ferrari like the car, where you can preview all my NYPD books for free, including NYPD, Presumption and Dysfunction. Thanks again, everyone. I appreciate you supporting the podcast, and I'll see you again next week.